I will finish this up. We should be out of here maybe in about 30, 35 minutes or so. And this will be it for our in-house, other than on Tuesday, when each of the groups will present their cases. I'm about to go drive 12 hours. So I still, get emails on the fly. So if you need me, just give me a contact. I'm only an email away. All right. Okay. So in advertising, there are two groups. One of them are called the suits and the other are called the creatives. All right. And the suits are the individuals who try to go out there and make money. That's kind of what you're supposed to do. And the creatives are the ones that go out there and actually create the ads. And there's always like this eternal conflict between the two of them as to which group has the greater authority. Having said that, the actual creation of the advertisements basically come down to 4 different elements when you're deciding on an advertisement. And this is regardless of whether or not the advertisements that you create are billboard, signage, whatever, because the message still needs to be the same. And so the first thing is what's called the appeal. And the appeal is basically the central kind of element that you're trying to convey to the consumer. And it depends very much on the advertisement itself, what kind of appeal you are going to use. So if you're doing things that do require more complexity, that require a lot more risk as well, usually your first appeal is going to be the irrational appeal, which is you bring a unique selling proposition that is different and separate from the others that are out there. And those are the reasons why you're willing to buy a given item. An emotional appeal occurs and is accepted, especially when it has to deal with something that is a very personal thing. Usually, if you're looking at Maslow's theory of hierarchy, you're looking at the most basic instinctive needs that we have, also somewhat up on the higher, 1 or 2 more steps higher, that have to do with safety, have to do with fear. Those are an emotional appeals. The reminder advertisings basically are there, especially if you're trying to have word of mouth and have the consumers consider to repurchase your items again and again. And then finally, a teaser ad. This is something we all know about, especially when it comes to movies, especially in that we're given just a taste of what is to come in the future. And let me show you the greatest teaser ad of all time. So this is the greatest teaser ad of all time.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh, and you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
Now, the interesting thing is that you never saw the computer, all right? You had no idea exactly what it was, and yet that advertisement was only shown once and it was shown on the Super Bowl of 1984, only shown once. And yet the replay on that particular commercial was over and over and over again. And that's what a teaser ad is supposed to do, is it's supposed to reach out and give you an appeal and want you to try to see it or find out more. There is a well-known thing in consumer behavior that says if you're not given a complete message, that you as a consumer will go out and seek out to find what the rest of the message is. So there used to be a song when commercials were around about cigarettes that said, you can take Salem out of the country, but you can't take the country out of Salem. And the song ends, or the commercial ends with, you can take Salem out of the country, but, and the commercial ends and mentally you finish that for you. So that's what an appeal ad is supposed to do, all right? So an execution format describes the structure of the message itself. And so generally, when you're talking about shopping goods, that's where comparison goods are done. Demonstration ads are especially used when a good has to be seen in order to be appreciated. Demonstration ads usually are most effective, as naturally as you would think, in video commercials. So there was an outstanding one for Sears Die-Hard batteries at one time, and they would show actual things that happened, like they would leave a car with its lights on in a parking lot for 12 hours, and they would actually show footage of people trying to open the door and things like that to turn out the lights. And then 12 hours later, someone would come up and start the car. That would be an example of a demonstration ad. Storytelling is actually a mini story. So it's a 30-second story on a particular item. And it may not even have anything to do with the item itself, but it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And in the story, it basically brings about that particular item and shows how this particular item saves the day. So there was a commercial in the 80s by Subaru where a girl calls up her boyfriend and says, Mom and Dad's gone out of the house, come on over. So they start playing When a Man Loves a Woman, and he's driving the Subaru, and the weather's awful, and he's talking about the tracking system, how well it works. And he shows up at the girl's house and he's wringing wet, and the dad opens the door. And she goes, Mr. Smith, and he goes, you're here. And he goes, yeah, we couldn't go out. The roads are terrible. What are you doing here, Alan? So that's an example of a story, okay? A testimonial is a statement of fact by an individual that guarantees the effectiveness of a given product. And this is what you see, especially with influencers on YouTube. And so Scotty Kilmer, who's one of my favorites, if you go to Scotty Kilmer, he lists items that he has personally tested himself, and those are the ones he likes, and he refuses to accept any money for many of the things that he gets. And that's an example of what a testimonial is. Slice of life and lifestyle are very close together, all right? So a slice of life shows you an event, like a wedding or a beach, and it shows you using the product while performing that. So an example is beer commercials, all right? Beer commercials do a lot of this, slices of life. So Miller High Life used to do those, and they also used to do lifestyles, which show individuals living in a fuller and more complete way as a lifestyle that gives you an idea of more than just slice of life. It's not a single moment or an event. This is the way these individuals live, all right? And one of the things Miller used to do this, you only go around once in life, so you got to grab all the gusto you can. I can still remember it, okay? And so it would show them, out off the beaches of Hawaii, catching crab and stuff like that, cooking fish with a stick, and then showing you use the beer. Mostly those are the ones that did those particular kinds of commercials.
Where would the Dodge commercial you showed us fall under those categories?
That would be a storytelling. So like the Dodge commercial where the Dodge brothers are together like that, that would be telling the story of the Dodge brothers, okay? How kind of two-fisted guys they were, how they lived their lives, how they.
I talked about that on one of the test answers. I was just making sure I got it right.
Yeah. The Dodge brothers are a really unique group, and you saw what we talked about John and Horace Dodge, really brilliant engineers. Were considered the hoi polloi because they didn't come from riches. And then they bought Detroit a symphony orchestra and said, these are not bad guys after all. Tragedy when I think it was Horace got measles and died, the pandemic of 1919. And John died like 6 months after that. It just an incalculable loss because you just don't know where those guys would have gone. We have the 1/4-ton pickup truck because those are the guys who conceived it. And the 1/4-ton pickup truck was one of the great saviors of World War I. We sent 250,000 pickup trucks over to World War I, and the mobility that they brought was beyond anything that the Germans could handle. I could go on, so I'm not. Okay.
Jeep trucks?
No, trucks, not Jeeps. The Jeep was invented in 1939. 1940, the American government wanted to come out with a small 4-wheeled vehicle that was easy to fix, that was capable of going over many different terrains. And so the Willys Corporation came up with a successful bid. You're talking about GM and Chrysler, where they all came up with the idea. But there's a little company called Willys came up with the Jeep itself. It was a 4-wheel drive, 4-cylinder, as you see it. And they're the ones who came up with the concept in and of itself, and that's why we have the Jeep. One of those brilliant designs that came up, very simple to operate. If anything, they rarely did they get in trouble with 4-wheel drive. They could get just about out of anything, and that's where 4-wheel drive came from. So it's another great story. Tonality refers to the mood or the attitude that the message hopes to convey. Straightforward mood is always for those things that require sincerity. Now, one of the difficulties with humor, okay, as an issue, is that many times everybody wants to be the funniest person in the room. We all do. We want to be the person that everybody laughs, all right? Well, it's no different when it comes to advertisements, but the problem with that many times is that the message itself gets lost in the humor. And from what we know from all of our research, nobody has ever moved the needle with a funny commercial, but we all have them. So this is a classic commercial. Let's see. So this was a commercial, I think, in the 2007 or 2008 Super Bowl. You may make me watch it, but I don't have to listen. I have a toothbrush, thank you. Oops, sorry. No, I don't want to try.
Your grandfather, he was the first cat herder in our family. Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy. folks in hotel, holding together 10,000 half wild short hairs. Well, that's another thing altogether. Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here. Look at his face. They just ripped to shreds, you know? You see the movies, you hear the stories, it's, I'm living and breathing. Not everyone can do what we do. I wouldn't think about the next. It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and ain't lost to one of them, ain't no feeling like it in the world.
Yes, managing the complexities of the digital economy.
So, what was it, who was the company? What were the product?
Cat herding for technology.
Yeah, what does it mean? Okay, and that's kind of the problem with commercials like this is, does it have a point? Okay, and it's EDS, Electronic Data Systems, by the way. It was Ross Perot's corporation. They do data management, those kind of things, but you never know from the commercial. Now, let me show you an effective, okay? Let's see. So, let's see, here it is. This is John Machida. This is Federal Express and one of their first national launching commercial. And it follows with the whole force and function of Federal Express.
Okay, you just talk about the you don't have the alien, you don't have the alien, but you don't have already got it. Got it. So you want to work with what really makes you think it's a good job? Well, sir, I think I think I'm going to figure out your time. Excellent. Can you start on Monday? Yes, sir. Absolutely. Congratulations, welcome aboard. Wonderful. Any conclusions you do about corporate low talk? Business is business, and as we all know, in order to get something done, you have to do something very important or make it feel. Maybe you had a bang up, I'm putting you in charge of Pittsburgh. I know it's perfect here, that's why I think Pittsburgh's perfect. You know, for the team.
Is Mr. Hoover here to see you?
I'll wait 15 seconds.
Can you wait 15 seconds?
I'll wait 15 seconds. Congratulations on your deal endeavor, Dave. I'm bringing you down to deal with Dallas. Not a deal that we have a deal. It's a deal. I gotta go to call. I mean, I don't sell time.
In this fast moving, high pressure, get it done yesterday, world. Aren't you glad there's one company that can keep up with it all?
Got a deal that I'm bringing down to deal with Dave. They want to deal with the deal. We're dealing. David's the deal with Bob. Dick Dog is the deal with Dave. Dick and Dave. Not the dog with Dick. David. Gotta go, Dave. Disconnect. You gotta go, Dick. Disconnect. You gotta go, Dave.
Okay, you get it? You got it? Yes, in other words, gotta get it done tomorrow world. It gives you an idea of how to get it done. And that's what a commercial should do if it's going to be humorous, okay? Dramatic, of course, are all those things that are serious, romantic and sexy, of course. And of course, fear generally is driving towards those safety needs, those needs to be able to feel secure within yourself or within your home or within your family. They did a great job with smoke detectors in the 80s. There was a man by the name of William Conrad who had this great, wonderful, powerful baritone voice. He played canon. He was also the narrator for Rocky and Bullwinkle, believe it or not. But he brought smoke detectors into the world by First Alert, and he just had this voice of authority, and it worked. Okay, so the tone is basically the mood. So the last one I want to talk about are the other things that are called creative tactics and techniques. So there's a very big gray area in there that we need to use to help to send the message. And the most likely one that most of us have seen are celebrities. And so celebrities or opinion leaders are usually those ones that carry the message easier than others do. And of course, animation and art always works. It works brilliantly. Now, here's one of the things. Music and jingles not only have a purpose, but a better one than actually talking. So we actually store in our mind music in a different location in our brain than we store speech. And as a matter of fact, in the brain itself, the area in which, let's say, tonal qualities in music is stored is older than the area that we store words. The first languages that we ever spoke were tonal in quality. And I've heard the speculation is that before humanity could speak, humanity sang. And so we can actually store things with music and they retain in our heads longer than if we had those in words. So I'm not even sure if you've ever seen this one, but I'm gonna go ahead and play it for you. So this came out in the 70s. I saw it in 74 and I still remember it, okay? Music stores in your head in a different place, okay? And if you can come up with an effective jingle, it stays in the consumer's mind forever. Pepsi came out with these commercials by a gentleman by the name of Peter Max, who came up with all of the psychedelic kinds of drawings and those kind of things. And they had a brilliant guy come up with a jingle that went, this is 7-Up. It's the nothing that brings us something. It's what we miss that hits the mark. It's what's left out that leaves us in. It's the light shining over the dark. And I remember those, and it's 1968 was the last time and I have looked for that commercial to show it to people, and I can't find it, but still it's retained in my memory and it'll never go out. So what I'm basically saying is that beyond all the other ways in which we can hope to be reminded by consumers that music and animation as well has a special impact with people, and it never goes away. So these are advertising. I'm not going to worry about anything else about the advertising campaign itself or print ads or any of the other things, because those are not important to me. But I am going to now move into what I talked about is sales promotion. A sales promotion is a collection of incentive tools, short-term, designed to stimulate quicker or greater purchase of a particular product by the consumers or the trade itself. And so these are established products that you wish to have consumers to buy. There is no education in that. But what they are hoping you do is that you buy it within a substantial moment in time. Now, the two things that sales promotion, the two worries about sales promotion are this. One of them is that one of the purposes of sales promotion is to have you switch your brands. And the truth is, people do not switch their brands from sales promotion, that we try again and again and again. The second issue also that happens is that with sales promotions, you have the difficulty of consumers buying goods earlier that they would have bought anyway. This is in essence what everyday low pricing is hopefully there to fix. So let's see, January, February, March, April, May, June, okay? So this is what happens, and this is why you do it, is that you'll have projections for sales, and this is the kind of a markup there that you want to, that you're hoping to hit, and you're bumping along, and what happens is that eventually somebody will say, we need to get these numbers up by the end of the month. And so they do a sales promotion and it goes to here. But the problem is that the next month starts dropped and we're having to fight our way up. And then eventually what's going to happen is they'll do another sales promotion that comes up here again. And these people that were going to purchase here jump down and then they go up again. And so what happens is that you get this kind of saw pattern that happens in the regular sales. And so why do we do it? Because there's some things that quite simply now we've become accustomed to. Remember, when we talk about reward power, that the expectation is that there should be some kind of sales promotion somewhere. When was the last time you bought a pizza without looking for a promotion? I can't remember. All right. So that's the issue. By the way, anybody have an idea of which month of the year is traditionally the lowest selling month of any month in the entire year? Close. February. Just for a simple reason. Two simple reasons. It's in between two major holidays, and it's the shortest month of the year, 28 days. Okay. So sales promotion is important, but not all that effective. Okay. You do find that you have your own objectives to try to be able to get it to work, but in all honesty and truthfulness, does it really work? It only works to me when you're doing things like sampling and trial. Now, as I talked about before, rebates are also part of this mix. And rebates are the offering of a price reduction after the purchase rather than at the retail store. And so you provide a proof of purchase and they refund it back. Now, has anyone ever done a rebate lately? How do you get it back?
I haven't done them recently. I
Okay.
remember a long time ago doing them on my cell phone,
Okay.
$50 back or.
How did you get it?
You had to mail something in,
Right. And what did you get back?
credit.
Yes. On the bill itself?
Back to the card it was purchased. with.
Credit card, right, yeah. So there's two ways that they do it. They will either send it to you credit on the account, in which case you never get it, all right, you never see it. And that defeats the point of what a rebate is supposed to be. You're supposed to physically hold it. Or what they do is they put it on a debit card with a fixed amount. And the truth is that there's always a residual amount on those debit cards. You rarely use them all up, and you've got within 30 to 90 days to use them. So it's kind of it's not a scam, and I shouldn't put it that way, because if you use it effectively, then you fulfill the contract of a rebate. But, you know, it's not my favorite way to do it. Like I said, I like the way Chrysler did it when the first time it came out. They sent you a check for $700 and you could cash that whole check. And I always thought that that was much more liquid than the credit card was. So don't worry about all those sales tools and effectives and developing the campaign and all the other kinds of things. The one other thing that I wanted to touch on before public relations is personal selling. Personal selling is the most expensive of all of the forms of advertising. And having said that, we spend almost a quarter of our entire economy on sales and sales-related areas. Because no matter how disparate we get between us and the consumer, there's nothing that replaces the personal touch. So we talked about the sales class that I have, and that not me and Mark, but Dr. Guy gives. We have 94% placement rate in our sales. We have sales conventions that are sponsored by sales corporations that in essence, give our students money to go to their conventions. And that is because, quite simply, it is so much more powerful to have an individual who acts as a boundary spanner, who is between the corporation and you as the individual. The salesperson can overcome objections at the point that they're given. The difficulty with the salesperson is like when you remember the continuum, the salesperson is in the middle. And the reason is that the salesperson can translate it into their own individual language versus the direct message. But that's also considered more sincere and more forthright by the consumer themselves. And so salespeople will never go away. And as a matter of fact, they're becoming more and more important as time goes on. Now, we talk about public relations, and I consider public relations to be an important asset to marketing, just like communications is. Public relations is promoting the message of a corporate entity. It is the communication from the corporate world to their consumers. They can do product publicity, but generally they're considered to be corporate broadcast or corporate marketing. Public relations can be some of the most important that's part of the good. So I talked about what happened to Perrier water and their failure in the public relations to immediately jump on the problem when it was considered that their water might be radioactive. Turn this back around, and in the 80s, oh my gosh, 1982, I can't remember. In the 80s, an individual who bought a bottle of Tylenol in the Chicago area died of cyanide poisoning. And they found that 2 or 3 days later, 2 or 3 other people died of Tylenol laced with cyanide. And it was dubbed the cyanide killer. And Tylenol, the corporation, had a decision, and then within 24 hours, they wiped every shelf in the United States of Tylenol. Now just think of what that took to do it. And the amount of money that they had to spend and what they had to do to convince the owners of those shelves to do that. Now, it wasn't a lot of convincing. Can you imagine, somebody who didn't do it, the liability involved? So, but they did it, and it was an amazing thing. And so within 5 days, Tylenol replaced all of those on the shelves with tamper-proof bottles. Now, this is brilliance, and this came from the public relations department, but it came directly from the CEO. The CEO of Tylenol went on television and said, there is nothing we can do to replace the lives that are lost. And it is a tragedy for those individuals who suffer this. And Tylenol will do whatever we can to amend that suffering. We have done one thing, and we have, let me see if I can remember it completely. It says, we have at least secured their sacrifice by determining ourselves to never have that happen again by replacing every Tylenol with a new cap. So they did what's called a triple seal, all right? First thing they did was they put a seal across the very top. The second thing they did is they did a locked bottle. And the third thing that they did was a plastic seal across the top. And then he did one thing better. He said, we urge all of our fellow partners in the pharmaceutical industry to protect all of our consumers by performing the same functions that we felt were important. And just like that, they put it on every other pharmaceutical company to do the exact same. So it meant that every corporation had to do it. And it meant that the cost was spread out, that they weren't the only ones that had a loss. That was an example of great public relations. I don't think they ever caught the cyanide killer. I don't think they did. But since that time, as far as I know, no one has ever died because of something that was not tampered with, okay? And so public relations are vital, it's important, it is the lifeblood of any corporation. Now, I'm gonna also say one last thing, and this always comes up in advertisement, is it propaganda? So, McCracken in 1957, the Journal of Psychology wrote, was this propaganda? And the answer was yes, okay? Propaganda is basically a story in which only one side of the issue is told. That's what propaganda is in its most basic form. But what he did say is that the consumer is well aware that advertising contains only a single side, and that it is up to the Federal Trade Commission to determine if those advertisements based upon consumer perceptions is false and or misleading. And so the hope is that the FTC is our watchdog and is constantly monitoring these things. And when there is false and misleading advertising, they're being taken care of. But the truth is that we all know it. In the 70s, in the Journal of Advertising, there was an article that said, "Let us put to rest forever the notion of the helpless consumer." And I think if you look at consumers, especially your ages, you're not fooled. I mean, especially with the assets that you have in your pockets to be able to find out whether something is true or not. Or let's just say this, if you are fooled, you're not fooled for long, and neither is everyone else. And that's the good thing about social media and many models. And that's it. We're done. So the last test is ready. It's ready to be opened on the 29th. I think I actually had it extended to August 2nd. But on Tuesday, we will come in, we will do our cases, and then we're done for the semester. If you wish to take the the optional final, it will be available on that day, and I'll have that listed. Okay? All right. So have a good weekend. Thanks for sticking with us.
Have you seen the series Deficit